But other than for that, it is 9:59. I'm gonna get started. Everyone ready for me to get started? Okay, I don't think that, they do have coffee out there. I didn't have any coffee this morning, so I'm just naturally caffeinated. That's all I am, even though I was laid off. But I did level up after being laid off. So this is a fun talk that Galen asked me to kind of put together a talk, and I was recently laid off. Spoiler alert, don't want to ruin the story. I thought that was kind of obvious. I know it's a tough time in the tech market, so hopefully this will resonate with some people who might be struggling and know that things will be okay. So I am from Philadelphia. Philadelphia is like 4.5 hours on a good day to drive up there. On a bad day, it's 6+ hours. Depends on how nice DC is, or whether Trump is in DC right now or not. That kind of influences the traffic. Comcast is a beautiful place to come visit. I recommend it, especially if you're like, I really just want to go to New York. Come to Philly instead. It's a lot cheaper, and you can take a train to New York. You'll save like 30%. You can go to New York for the day. Philly has really good food. Those are the two Comcast buildings. So Comcast kind of like owns Philadelphia in some regards. So they're big buildings, and ever since COVID, you know how it is. It's like half empty now. You spend all that money on these giant buildings. But beautiful skyline. And I was at Comcast for 17 years. I'm going to pick on my colleague here, John. We got hired at the same time. He is still there. I am no longer there, but I was there for 17 years, which you're probably like, I thought you were an engineer. How do you stay at one place for 17 years, right? Which some people are like, that's a ridiculous career. But it was a great time. So I will also recommend Comcast is a great place to work for. I still love Comcast. I love the people there, except for the people who got me laid off. And those people, we'll talk about them later. But in general, Comcast is a great place to work. So I do recommend it. And I was there for 17 years. And I started my career right out of college. So, you know, you graduate college, you have like a year of looking around, then you get settled into the corporate ladder. And this was before we actually had levels. So now it goes up to like level 7. I think it's level 8. Level 8 is fellow. I made it to the distinguished engineer on the corporate ladder. But for many years, I was working there, and it's like, I didn't, you know, you have senior level, mid-level. I just consider myself an engineer because I like to get stuff done. I really don't care about my job title. But as the corporation grows, you start bringing in newbies, those new people out of college. And like I emphasize, when you first start working as a programmer, you are working all the time because you need to work at least 40 hours on the job. And then you need 20 hours reading books, reading other people's code, understanding what the heck is all this stuff that happened with programming, because there is so much happening. And then you slowly level up. You get to apprentice, where you're like, someone else trusts you to get something done. And then level 3 is like, yep, this person, I trust them, they're going to get things done. And then you get to the point where you're doing good work by yourself, and then people promote you into like, you can run a team now. We trust you not only to do your own code, but maybe to help other people build something bigger. And eventually you become an expert, which is like leading over multiple people. Architect, who knows what architects do, right? They get to the point where like, I don't really write any code anymore, but I figure out whatever other people should be doing. And then level 7 is distinguished engineer. That is like the happy spot where all you do is you go do public speaking. So not only do you not write code anymore, you just go talk about the code that you're not writing anymore. And I like to make fun of AI. So a lot of these images were AI generated. Can we turn off the lights in the front? So lighting. I'm just gonna mess this up. Are we good with all lights off? Because that's the easy button to press. Is that too dark for anybody? I could go presentation. Let's see if presentation. That's better. Is that good? That's good. Okay, we're going to continue on. Sorry about that. So this is a great AI picture of, this is basically my life for the last couple of years. I think, you know, after COVID or before COVID, I did like 20 speaking engagements, which you can imagine if you have 52 weeks a year, it's basically every other week I was speaking. And I was like distinguished gentleman speaking, and all the people are looking the other direction, which is really great AI. Just want to point that out. So the other cool part about being a distinguished engineer is you go in and people just respect you. They're like, oh, hey, you're Chris Lorenzo. heard about you before. You're a distinguished engineer. I'm like, yeah, that's right. You know, you got a problem? I know how to fix your problem. And it's mostly because you've been programming for so many years, you understand how everything works. So you're just like, yeah, that's this. But one thing I want to emphasize is having FU money. This is a very important thing. And I recommend this for anybody who is a senior and above. You should start saving and saving money, because one day you're going to get laid off, or you're going to get fired, or you're going to annoy somebody. Because one of the things I emphasize is, you know, as a senior person, you should be pushing back against product. You should be pushing back against design. You should be the guy that people butt heads with the most, because your goal is to build an awesome system. And in order to do that, you need to make sure you have power, which power is like security, that if you get fired or laid off, you will not be homeless. Like that's basically the goal. So I wanted to emphasize that. And I don't like saying the line, so then I also put a proverb underneath it to make sure, like, the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is slave to the lender. So mixing the two, they offset. So let's continue. Disclaimer. There are two sides to every story. So I was laid off. This is going to be my story that I'm going to go through everything that happened. But just know, this is, again, my version and interpretation of it. And my boss probably has a different interpretation of it. And he obviously does, because I won't say anything because this is recorded. Anyway, so we're going to go back 3 years prior to being laid off. Set the tone. And in a galaxy far, far away, a time long, long ago, there was this team, the LightningJS team. And they were a team from Amsterdam. They were acquired by Comcast as part of Metrological. And, you know, when you ask for programmers, they're all in hoodies, and they're like all looking at one screen, kind of like pair programming. That's how they do it in Amsterdam. I don't know if they just all program. But the LightningJS team built this WebGL renderer. And you probably haven't heard of it because they're really big in Europe, but not in the US. I didn't even know like development happened outside of the US. And Vue.js is super popular in Europe. Not as popular in the US, but in Europe, it's like the bomb. Everybody uses Vue.js. They're like, Vue.js is greater than React. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. But as you can imagine, I work at Comcast, or I worked at Comcast, past tense. I'm no longer employed there. I'm not representing Comcast as an employee. But we built TV apps. Like, we built television stuff, because that's what they do, is they build TV. And again, this Lightning framework was really useful because you could build these advanced UIs with web technologies. And the beauty of it is these UIs are built inside of a browser. So there's a web browser running on your set-top box. There's web browsers running inside your TV, and they're embedded. So this is WPE, which is WebKit embedded. Chromium runs on a lot of TVs too. Chromium's pretty great. A lot of people switched from WPE to Chromium. I don't know why we haven't yet, but that's because technology is very slow to adopt and change. And just so you know, on your TV devices, the year you buy your TV is the year that the version of your browser is stuck at. So they rarely update the browser. And you can imagine how much better browsers are today than they were 5 years ago. The performance is so much better on browsers too. We're not going to go into that too much. But because of this, we can now write these really advanced UIs on our desktop, on our laptop, using the same web technologies that web developers use and take for granted, right? It's so great to have web development environment, use the browser on your laptop, and what you're generating in your laptop on the browser, what you see there, is the same thing that you'll see on the TV screen. But the downside of this is if you tried to use HTML and CSS, which we built this with HTML, CSS. This is Xfinity X5. The problem with HTML and CSS is if you know anything about the browser stack, it's actually really complicated what the browser is doing. It's amazing how quickly they do it, but they take your HTML markup, they take your CSS, they create document object models, they create CSS object models, they combine it all together, they do this really advanced layout painting algorithm, they compute everything, they draw it on the screen, and they're like, boom. And you're like, that's great. But if you're doing it on a TV device, TV devices are like 100 times slower than your laptop. Like they are terrible, terrible. And the GPU on them, like drawing stuff, is super slow too. You're like, wow, I'm amazed that they can play 4K video. But other than that, like the GPU for 4K video is pretty good, but everything else is really terribly slow. So in order to circumvent this and increase performance, the Lightning team used WebGL, which is this really cool graphics library drawing that exists in all browsers. It's called the canvas tag. So if you use the canvas tag, and most web developers are like, canvas tag, who uses that, right? I use canvas tag. It's frustrating. There's not much there. I really suggest you stick to HTML and CSS. It's much better. But canvas tag is really good graphics drawing library. And by using WebGL, the Lightning team is able to get more frames per second out of the boxes because you're basically telling the browser, just draw this thing and move it around. Whereas if you're using CSS and HTML, there's all this translation that has to happen to make things move. So Lightning started in 2016, this team that Comcast acquired. They started in 2016. They had a Lightning 1.0 version. We acquired them probably somewhere in the Lightning 2 version. And inside of Comcast, we were using this framework to develop these TV apps. And COVID hit in 2020, just so you got the timeline of everything. And they started to announce a Lightning 3. They were like, we're going to build a third version of this because that's what frameworks do. They build one, they build two. What is Angular up to? Like Angular 16, 17? I don't even know. I don't even keep track of Angular anymore. Because the problem with Lightning 2, I actually got to work on Lightning 2 and building TV apps before I joined the Lightning team. So I was doing Lightning 2 development for about a year. I don't know if that was before I was a distinguished engineer or I was a distinguished engineer. I still wrote some code. I love writing code, so I did write some code. And the problem with Lightning 2 is it was a monolith. So it had the renderer code and the framework was all in one. There was no reactivity. And reactivity, you're probably like, you probably don't even know what it is because you take it for granted so much, is when you change a variable and the UI automatically updates. That's reactivity. With Lightning 2, you had to change variables, then you had to call patch, you had to tell it where you wanted to change. It was frustrating. The other thing is, anybody ever heard of LightningJS? No? Yeah, that's because it's a unique proprietary framework that if you've never done TV app development, you probably never heard of it. You know how great it is to hire someone for LightningJS? And recruiters will call you and like, hey, do you have LightningJS? But if you put that on your LinkedIn profile, you're gonna get a lot of phone calls. You're gonna get phone calls because you are a snowflake in developers. And the other thing that we struggle with is Chrome 38. Chrome 38 is like the oldest version of browser that we have to support, which exists in like LG and Tizen 2016 TVs. So 9-year-old TVs. Okay, we're 2025 minus, yeah, it's like 9 years. It's pretty terrible. So I was like, I had the opportunity to join the Lightning team because you know how every year large companies like restructure. So restructure coming, which team do you want to join? I was like, I'll join the LightningJS team. I've used it for a year. I have a lot of suggestions about this Lightning 3 version that's coming out. Part of Amsterdam. This is a generated AI photo of Amsterdam. But it does kind of look like that, so it's pretty nice. And now we meet my boss, the boss of Lightning 3. So Lightning 3 was like on the roadmap. They were considering building this, and they're like, we can rebuild it. We can make it faster, better, cheaper. And it was great. So they've been working on it for about a year, and there's this tech summit that they go to every year. And in 2022, he goes up on stage, and he tells everybody, we have this new renderer. So we're going to break up the framework. We're going to have the thing that does the WebGL calls and draws as one JavaScript bundle. And it will do all this amazing stuff that's better than Lightning 2. And we're building this new framework called Blitz. And this is our arch nemesis, Blitz. So we're going to build a new framework that has Vue-like syntax. So it'll basically be Vue.js. It'll have reactivity. It'll be built in. It'll do all this cool stuff. And we're going to build a custom VS Code extension to support this. It'll be great. Everybody will love it. We'll build this new framework. 1 year goes by. So this is where you do SpongeBob 1 year later. I'm not going to do it correctly. It's too early in the morning. But 1 year later, what happens? Well, we have the next tech summit, right? Because a year goes by. You have tech summits every year. And my boss goes back to the tech summit the following year. And he's like, well, what's the update for Lightning 3, right? Where is it? When's it coming? And he's like, Lightning 3, it's coming soon. And so I've been on the team for about a year, and I'm talking to one of the developers. And that developer is like, Lightning 3, where it's on fire. Like, it is a mess. It is a mess. And at this point, like, I'm just public speaking. I'm talking all the time. I'm like, I'm waiting for Lightning 3 to come out because I want to promote it. I want to do like all these YouTube help tutorials and documentation and examples and everything. But at this point, I'm just like, I'm talking to him, and he worked on the renderer code. So the renderer code is this thing which you get low-level primitives where you create a node. So this is the API for the renderer, for LightningJS render. You tell it X, Y positions. What do you want to draw? You can give it a source image, and you give it X, Y. So essentially, Lightning with WebGL is, imagine divs, and every div is position absolute. That is LightningJS in a nutshell. You just put anything wherever you want all over the screen. And there's two primitives: create a node, create text. That's it. So with that, oh, and then you can animate things too. So there's an animation API to move things from this X position to this Y position. And you're like, it's very simple, right? With just using those APIs, he had this little demo page. He had this guy moving across. Those other little guys are dancing. The elevator goes up and down. And he's like got this whole thing built. And he's like really frustrated because we need to build this, right? We need to build a whole UI. And you need a framework to do that. And he's like, dude, Blitz, they haven't done anything for a year. They haven't done anything. So I'm like, all right. I get really frustrated when like one of my friend, like your colleague is like, he's really struggling. You know how that is? And you're like, I gotta help him. I gotta help him. So I'm on my way over to the RDK Tech Summit. And this is my prompt for AI, right? Hero, white, tall male, programmer working hard on an airplane. Look at all that space on the airplane. I mean, I have like elbow room and desk space, and there's windows that go all the way around as like a circumference. Nobody's sitting next to me. This was the best airplane ride that I've had in my life. I've never had it so good. I mean, I would love that. But anyway, I'm working on the plane, and I'm like researching what can we do. And so here's one of the first feedbacks. Oh, I don't have the Mario sound. Do you have the Mario sound? So just picture the do-do-do-do-do-do. Okay, so I did it, but yeah, get the Mario song. Instead of feeling defeated, see the problem as a challenge you can solve on your own, turning frustration into a breakthrough moment. So rather than getting down in the dumps, see if you can fix it by yourself. Which is there we go. Thank you. Okay, just keep it just once. We'll move forward. We'll have the sound again. So on the airplane, like I'm researching what alternatives can we do, and I come across SolidJS because one of the things is performance. The first thing that you need, if anybody's used TV apps and you're like, this is really slow, it's clunky, it doesn't start up, like you just don't use those apps. You go to Netflix because Netflix has the best performance, which is really tough to do. So the first thing, like I'm reading about SolidJS and like I love it. The first thing is like it's the fastest. I'm like, whoo. You had me at it's the fastest, right? I'm like, I'm ready to date you. You're the best, Ryan. You're the fastest. And then I stumble upon this article where he talks about the universal render target. And what he does is SolidJS is you're able to use the syntax for SolidJS as a universal render target. And he has an example of using it to render WebGL. So imagine writing JSX syntax and it renders to WebGL. And I'm like, this is exactly what I need to do. I need to write JSX syntax and render Lightning nodes. So I'm researching this on the plane. I'm reading about the API for this. And this is the API to make a universal renderer happen. It's pretty small, but if you are a computer science person, you probably have already read create element, create text node. It's basically, these are the API calls that SolidJS does to say, what do you want me to do when you want me to create an element, create a text node, set properties on the node, and then you create a DOM tree with it. So it's add parents, remove parents, I mean, get rid of children, add children, all this family relationship stuff. A lot of drama in there, but we're not going to go into that. But yeah, this is a very simple thing. So now we can take this universal API, and whenever we have a node in JSX, all it's doing is it's converting it to a function call, which then calls the renderer create node and plops something on the screen. And the same thing with text element, like you just create a text element, it does a translation to a function, calls the underlying text element, I set some default properties on there to be nice as a framework author. And I was like, this is great. So I'm at the conference and I'm like, I got Hello World happening, right? And I'm like, Hello World, this is great. I'm really excited. 2 months later, so I'm playing with this thing for 2 months. And by playing with it for 2 months, you know how you become an engineer and you're like 2 months of 12-hour days every day for the whole week, weekends, just that was basically my life for the next 2 months because I was like, this is awesome. I want to get this done. This is super exciting. I'm like, boom, TMDB sample app with the LightningJS render with SolidJS up and running 2 months later. It was awesome. And it even had like animations going. You could go to different things. I had the entity pages. Everything was awesome. And I'm like, woo, SolidJS and Lightning, a new hope. Which is a throw out to Star Wars in case anybody missed the reference. But yeah, I know.
Star Wars sound effect for that.
Oh yeah, do we have a Star Wars sound effect? No, we don't. We only have to level it up. The next slide is leveled up, so we'll have a sound effect in a second. But at this point, 2 months later, I'm super excited. We have the SolidJS library is like 6 kilobytes. So altogether, we're like 10 kilobytes for the whole framework. It is super fast. Like it's basically doing everything that Blitz was supposed to do. JSX is converted directly to function calls, which create nodes right away. And it was ready. Like less than 3 months, we went from idea to full framework working with a sample demo app. I'm like, let's ship this thing. So level it up. Personal initiative and ownership can lead to rapid progress. And I think this is very important in life when you see something that's like, this could be worthwhile, like spend your time on it, really focus and get stuff done. And so inside of Comcast, there was a lot happening. So this is December of 23. So I finished like in October or end of October with this framework. And inside of Comcast, we had this challenge going on because people were researching Flutter. Flutter is like the new hotness. So it's like maybe we can use Flutter for cross-TV app development, cross-app development for everything. And so they had a bake-off between Flutter and Lightning 3. And I was like, well, let's do a bake-off. Let's use this new TMDB app that I have going, and let's see how it's going. And Flutter, by the way, like it renders really well. But once you start doing animations, woo, no FPS whatsoever because it's not direct rendering to whatever the graphics library is. Like there was problems with it. It would draw stuff on the screen, but animations was just like awful. So at the time, I spent the time building this out, testing out, going against the Flutter framework and being like, okay, let's compare Lightning 3. I'm also diving into the renderer code to optimize that for performance. And I'm like, a lot of stuff going on. At the same time, in November, December, the Xumo Play team comes to me. And they're like, hey, we have this Xumo Play app. Anybody ever used Xumo? I've never really used it either. I won't say. But they have a TV app. And the problem with the TV app was it took 18 seconds to start up on TVs. I know, 18 seconds. So you click on the, I want to start the Xumo app.
It's broken. Yeah.
Yeah, it's broken. I'm only pausing for 7 seconds and it's already awkward enough, right? So it's pretty awkward. I'm like, okay, I want to work on the Xumo Play. So I joined that team and I'm like, we'll rebuild it. We'll use this Lightning 3. We'll use this SolidJS. And I go to my boss and I'm like, hey, I have all this stuff going on. I'm competing against Flutter. I'm going to help the Xumo team build. SolidJS is working. The render's working. It's only me. Please give me additional support. We have 5 people on the team. Give me someone else to help, right? He's got 4 people developing this Blitz framework, and I'm like, I need some more help. And that's when things started to sour. For whatever reason, there was definitely conflict inside of the Comcast tower. So that's like Lightning with the Comcast tower. This is a pretty good AI generation and PowerPoint slides. But I'm like, render is done. I have a full framework. It's fully working. We can announce a 1.0. We can go to production. Everything's working. And I got no support from my boss. No support. They're like, no, we need to continue releasing Blitz because we told everybody we're working on Blitz. We're going to get things going. So I spend the next 2 months working hard with this Xumo team. And we rebuild this Xumo Play, the Xumo Play app. And it started 17 times faster. So it was launching in under 2 seconds. It was 400% faster than their Lightning 2 version, which was the one that they had in before. And it beat out Disney Plus and Amazon Prime in startup speed. So it was starting up way faster than those things. Like it was amazing. Like it was so beautiful. And the manager shows it to the executives at Zumo, and they're like, we totally need this yesterday. Can we ship this? How soon can we ship this? And they were like, well, we're like, it's going to take like another 2 or 3 months to get it fully done, get everything working. And they're like, we can't wait that long. Backport the changes to the previous version and just make the previous version faster. And they didn't understand that going from Lightning 2 to Lightning 3 was like going from Angular 2 to AngularJS to Angular 3. You know that one major version where everything was broken and it was totally different? That's what this was. They thought it was a minor version update and they could backport everything to the previous version, and it just didn't work that way. So that was kind of like, I was so frustrated at that point because you can't go to people and be like, what are you doing? You got it so much faster. You can't spend the time going back to fix up the old thing because it won't work. So I'm also talking to my boss this whole time, and he turns into Super Saiyan mode. Yeah, I was like, this is Super Saiyan angry boss mode. And he's like, I'm like, we have everything done. I'm building frameworks. I'm building apps. Render is done. When are we announcing 1.0? He delays and delays and delays. It's like, I can't release 1.0 until we have Blitz done. And just for a timeline of what happened, right? This is the Blitz GitHub history. Solid came out right where that arrow is pointing, and you'll notice that competition really causes like things to happen, right? So even though what I did was cause a lot of conflict on the team by introducing an alternative, it also motivated the team to actually do something about what they were supposed to be doing the whole time. I'm waiting for you to chime in. It seems like you wanted to chime in. Okay. Oh, no, it's not yet. We're not leveled up yet. And if you've never written a new framework before, you might want to know it's really hard to write a framework. Like, it is really hard. It is a lot of work. There is a ton of stuff going on. And during that process, there are a lot of bugs. Like, things don't work, positions are all over the place, rendering code, compiling code. Like, it just didn't work. People were going into this and playing with it. They would get like a half a day in and they'd be like, this thing doesn't work, that thing doesn't work, I can't build anything with it. And the original goal of the renderer was to bring your own framework. That's why we split it up into renderer and framework. They're two separate projects and any one could be used. And so at the time, like when we were first starting, I felt okay. Like we had on our website, we had Blitz and SolidJS, but it was really becoming clear that SolidJS was the black sheep of the family. Like I was not wanted. Everything that I did was not wanted. And I was like, well, this is kind of depressing. Cue the sound. All right. Refuse to give up on what you believe has value despite the challenges within the corporate system. So at this point, I start pushing back against my boss, right? I said, I'm a distinguished engineer. We have something done. Things started getting heated. And I challenged my boss. I'm like, what is the goal of software development? What is our job as engineers? And this is a really great summary by Dan North. This is a great YouTube video. It's to sustainably minimize lead time to business impacts. Okay, our job is not to write software or code. It's to write software and code to solve a business problem. And the sooner you solve it, the better. Proof of concept, always better than nothing. Like if you have a button that does 20% of the work and saves people 20% of the time, get it out there as soon as possible. Keep iterating on it because your ultimate goal is to simplify business problems as quickly as possible. And the next thing is code is not the asset. It is the cost. Like you write code, code is your baby. You're really proud of it. You're awesome. But then you know, long term, you have to take care of that code. That code is never great for long. You look at it next month and you're like, who even wrote this code? What is their problem? It was totally AI. I know that it messed up. And the core of this, Robert Glass says, maintenance accounts for 60% of software development costs. So doing the initial coding is not that expensive. It's actually only 40% if you subtract it out. It's the long term. Like once you create a framework like Blitz, you have to maintain it now for 5 years. And that maintenance is the most expensive part, which is why I was like so frustrated. I'm like, do you have any idea how much this thing's gonna cost long term? And yeah, things really got heated between my boss, like having these type of conversations and being like, I don't think we should be doing this. And then we started having arguments over JavaScript runtimes and compilers and the JIT, the just-in-time compiler for JavaScript, and memoization. Like when you start arguing with your boss about memoization, you know things are bad. Like that's it. So on 4/18, I have my one-on-one call with my boss, and within the first minute, HR pops on. And it's like, hey, thank you for working here. You're no longer working here. That was a fun day. That was a fun day. So I got laid off. I had 6 weeks. I got 6 weeks notice. So like you're going to be laid off in 6 weeks. Now, for all fairness, like Comcast has been downsizing. Most of the time, you don't get rid of engineers who are doing work. But if you're fighting with your boss, I think that's more reasonable to get rid of those people. So I got laid off on 4/18. The very next day, I have a YouTube interview with Ryan Carniato, the creator of SolidJS. And I'm on his YouTube telling him about this LightningJS integration. He's got like an audience of 4,000 people watch his YouTube channel. So the very next day, I'm on this call with him, and I'm like, I don't want to mention I just got laid off. But he's like, what's this alternative framework with Blitz and everything? And I'm like, yeah, I also I wasn't negative about Blitz like for the whole time, because I couldn't be like, Blitz is the worst, you shouldn't use it, it's terrible, it has so many bugs, like, because I'm also supposed to support the team, like I felt like a team player. So it was a really conflicting call to be like, let me just talk about Solid and how great this was. And he even asked the question, which probably most people ask, is like, why didn't you just use React? Like everyone uses React. And I was like, well, SolidJS is faster. I've used React in the past. And if you do all the set states and everything, and you have all these function calls, like it gets slow pretty quickly. People mess it up. So I was very excited to use SolidJS. This was a great call. There's only like an hour and a half of me talking with Ryan. But it was fun waking up the next day and being like, let me do a call when I just lost my job after 17 years. But then the next thing that I did was I started talking to my recruiter friends. So this is also another very important thing. Be friends with recruiters, okay? Recruiters are your best friend. I talked to my one recruiter friend, and she was like, I'm so happy that you got laid off. We need you, right? And she's like already like sending me out to like multiple people who need LightningJS developers, because LightningJS is a very niche market. And so she had like new work lined up for me for as soon as I was done my existing job, which was really great. So going back into the timeline, I still had 6 weeks left to work, but the very next week, the Lightning team removed me from my ability to write code for Solid and release Solid. They removed all my access, which was kind of fun because we just restructured, and I then had to email my boss's boss to be like, hey, I have 5 weeks left here at Comcast, and my boss has removed all permissions for me to do any work. What would you like me to do? And then she sent an email to him like, you better undo what you did very quickly, because that's not how we work around here. But yeah, at this time, things were just progressively getting like he just wanted to squash the SolidJS integration, remove it, and just go with Blitz. He archived the project, and basically that last 6 weeks of work was the busiest time that I've worked, like the hardest I've worked in many years, because I had so much to do, right? I had to prepare for the next stuff. So my last day was June 3rd. Which was a few days before my birthday. That's always the best time to be laid off, is right before your birthday. I think we had a vacation plan too. So yeah, it's fun. Do it one more time. We gotta get the whole sound. Okay, so level up. Perceived setbacks can also give you the freedom to innovate without corporate restrictions. So inside of Comcast, I was getting beat down left and right. I was getting no support, no help from anybody. Being laid off was actually a blessing. As soon as I got laid off, I started building a website. I got this connected TV website, and I called it lightningtv.dev. I forked the repo because, you know, what's in GitHub is always open source. You can fork it at any time if you don't agree with what other people are doing. fork it and start your own thing. So I had a repo. I pulled all my solid code over, the demo code, everything. I started creating a YouTube channel. I have probably 20 or 30 videos up teaching people how to do it. I wrote some Medium articles. I'm blasting it all to LinkedIn. I have this awesome website saying all the things that SolidJS does, that Blitz doesn't do, or is missing. And of course, I update my LinkedIn profile and I put, oh yeah, so this is a fun story, right? So the recruiter has a new job for me and he's like, oh yeah, you're just gonna be senior lightning engineer. And I'm like, wait a minute, let me think about this, right? I can call myself whatever I want, right? Because I was a distinguished engineer before and like the next level is fellow. So I'm like, I'm gonna be a fellow lightning developer. Can we do that? And she's like, yeah, we can do whatever you want. So now I'm a fellow. I gave myself a promotion, which is really great because whenever you leave a job, always get promoted in the next level. That's what you do. So now I am a fellow lightning developer. And just so you were aware, like inside of Comcast, to become a distinguished engineer, you have to write documentation. So there's like 10 pages of paper that I had to write to submit that. You have to do talks. You have to do all kinds of things. Then you have to renew like every 2 years. You go before a board. They have to approve it unanimously. Like it's a lot of work. So it is a lot of work. I didn't want to do it for fellow because like I don't like writing paper. I like getting stuff done. Yeah. So I promoted myself too. It was really great. Great innovation isn't just about building something. It's about creating a community that can carry your work forward and amplify its impact. And I think this is the great part about software development and even coming and speaking at conferences. This is all about community. It's about people you know. It's about building and writing code, getting feedback on that code, getting other people to help you with that code, and really building something else up that's awesome. So at this point, I had all these things going, and my former boss is now at the stop him at all costs. I probably should have left him in Super Saiyan mode, but he went back to normal mode. He got tired after a while. But he said, stop him at all costs. So within a month of leaving, I got a letter from a lawyer with trademark infringement of you can't do this with your website and all this other stuff. And I was like, okay, like some of this stuff I emailed back and forth. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll change the name a little bit, but not too much. And then the lawyer was like, well, you also are claiming to be a Lightning developer. That implies that you're on the Lightning team. And I'm like, I don't think you understand software development. Like if I say I'm a React developer, that doesn't mean I'm a core React developer building the React framework. Like Lightning is a framework and everything. Like that's not how it works. So it was like fun back and forth. But basically when you get attacked from like authority or lawsuits, like just push back against them. Automatically be nice and kind. Be like, oh yeah, help me understand. What am I doing wrong here? Because this is my understanding. So I was really nice and I explained back. And then that kind of like all just fizzled out because there was nothing there. And then the Lightning team like updated their website with this new promo of Blitz is the most efficient framework for immediate rendering, optimized for large screen applications with the lowest memory footprint and fully fine-grained reactivity. It delivers high performance for TV experiences. Like that's gobbledygook. That really means nothing. And they have this graphic of Blitz is faster than Solid. It's faster than the React version. So there was a React integration that also came about. And then it's faster than Lightning too. And I'm like, ain't no way this is right? Ain't no way. So I go and look at their benchmark code. And I read through this. And so their benchmark is just creating nodes, doing different things, replacing rows, moving stuff around. Which is kind of ridiculous. It doesn't really match what real frameworks need to do for building something. But I go through this code because I like making things fast as well. And this is where they got these numbers from is like the render is at 1.29, 1.4-ish is Blitz, and then Solid's at this 1.72. And so what this code is doing is it's actually just producing a whole bunch of nodes. So those are all nodes of different colors with different text on there. You're like, great, 10,000 nodes being created. So I go through this and I'm like, he doesn't know what he's doing with the SolidJS version. So he wrote all the code himself. And in order to trigger reactivity, he's setting it to blank and then setting it to the new version. And anybody who knows like React, when you set something to blank, well, it's got to process that first. So it's going through deleting all the nodes and then recreating all the nodes rather than reusing all the nodes. So I was like, what? This isn't how you do things. This isn't how you write good code. And then in some cases, I'm looking at it, both Blitz and Solid are built off of the render. So the render should always be faster than the others, right? Like if the render is the thing creating the nodes and you're calling it to create the nodes, and somehow Blitz is faster than the renderer doing its work, you know something's wrong in that test case. So here, Blitz is slightly faster, replacing rows. So he has some really weird code in here where you skip every 5th row or 10th row to do alternative work. So you're going through a list of 1,000 items and you're doing every 5 or every 10. But for Blitz, it was skipping every 5 and the renderer was doing every single row. So the Blitz had like a 5x speed up because it was only processing every 5th element. I think I'm saying it kind of clearly. So it was doing every 5, whereas the other frameworks were doing every single row. I think that's a good. I got it there. So I fixed that up, and then memory. I fixed up memory usage. So Solid now uses less memory than Blitz. It's faster and uses less memory than this framework that they've been working on for 3 years. 5 people working on for 3 years, and Solid is a better solution done in 3 months. Oh.
Got it.
And like with open source, competition is not the enemy. It's the fuel that drives innovation. Embrace it and use it to grow. Like frameworks come out of other frameworks because new ideas to speed things up, to make things better. We're reaching the plateau where like the frameworks are really good. You don't really need much innovation. But the goal is like to sharpen each other, right? To make things better, to adopt ideas, to take other ideas and utilize it as your own. And so what is the goal of open source software? Which this is kind of my thought of what open source software is. And open source software is really about community. It is really about getting other people to use your software. It's about getting feedback on your software. It's about other people being able to contribute to it, give new ideas. It's all about like diversity, right? And the problem with the Lightning team, this is angry developers, right? You still need to be in hoodies, and you're just angry. And every developer has beards of some sort. It's weird. I should put different genders in there too. I'm sorry about that. But this is AI. AI does this. It's no big thing. But the problem with the Lightning team is they had this like not invented here. They did not want to use anyone else's code. So when they were building their Blitz framework, all this syntax, all this stuff, they wrote everything from scratch for 3 years. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Don't you know that there's a Vue template compiler that you can just download and use? It will take all your markup and convert it to function calls. Like it already exists. Why are you writing this again? Why are you writing a VS Code plugin? There's VS Code plugins that exist. With SolidJS, you don't need a VS Code plugin. Like I want people to be able to just use it without needing all these additional steps. But the goal is, don't reinvent the wheel to innovate. Embrace what works, make it your own, and build on the foundations laid before you. If you want to move fast, find open source stuff, learn it. It's much faster to learn someone else's code that works really well, that's been around for a few years, than it is to try to write everything from scratch and build buggy stuff. So things eventually got even worse. There is a LightningJS Discord community, which I was a part of, and a lot of people go to the LightningJS Discord and ask questions, which I'm very helpful. I answer a lot of questions. And eventually I was being too helpful answering questions, and I got banned from the LightningJS Discord, which was kind of frustrating. But don't worry, there is another Discord, the SolidJS Discord. And when you have a good community and you have people who like you, they actually go on the LightningJS and they're like, hey, are you asking a question about Solid? We actually have a different Discord for that. You should come over to the other pool, which is really nicer. So it's really been great working with the SolidJS community because, like, I know Ryan, I know David Bass. He's like the #2. And he's like, I'll give you a channel in SolidJS Discord. I'll help you with whatever you want. Like, it's like such a different vibe for people who are protective about what they do versus people who are like, I want to share and help other people, right? And that really should be your goal as software developers. All right, so the final single long quote, you don't have to read all this, but this was someone else posting. And this is like, when you have community, you have people who watch your back because they're like, Chris is a great guy. Why are you giving him such a hard time? It's like, I am concerned to see a bias in the past weeks on this Discord server toward Blitz-only conversations. Do you understand with surprise that the main contributor of the solid lightning adapter has been revoked to share on this forum? Given the nature already niche and really specialized of LightningJS technology, I believe the community should welcome as much contribution and healthy discussion as possible on its main forum. Yeah, so I am now banned on LightningJS, and it was because of all the hostility that I created towards the former team, which I thought was kind of hilarious because they have all the power and they have constantly been using that power to attack and destroy the project that I've been working on. But as this talk implies, I've leveled up. I don't have to go back into the office. So Comcast, after COVID, they started bringing people back in the office. I am now fully remote. I support multiple projects. I have people reaching out for help. So if anyone here is trying to build a TV application and wants a Lightning developer, I am now a contractor and available for something. And let's do our last level up sound. Don't let others define your work or limit your vision. The truth will always surface and innovation speaks for itself. Work hard, you'll eventually be rewarded, and you'll be fine. I think that's exactly 45 minutes or 47, 8 minutes, something like that. But thank you all for coming. If there's any questions, I'll be here. You're welcome to talk to me outside. Everyone's kind of speechless. Thank you.